Can you tell us a little about your style, how you got started within the martial arts, and just your origin within that field?
Well, first, for the record, I'm actually from the island nation of Jamaica. I started a martial art there in 1957, where I happened to be part of the swimming team, and they had a judo competition at the club that we have a sports at. So I started out with judo, and over the years, then I migrated into Okinawa and Shorin-ryu. My first interaction with the martial art, karate, so to speak, was in Okinawa and Shorin-ryu, and I went into that for quite some time. I became a Grandmaster in 1994, where my instructor, Albert Derensberg from Chicago, Illinois, and Ramon Bodine of Cuba promoted me to a 7th Dan in Okinawa and Shorin-ryu. In 2012, I was promoted to a 9th Dan in Okinawa and Shorin-ryu, and then in 2014, Grandmaster Williams promoted me to a 7th Dan in Kempo, which I've been studying for quite some time with the UK and San Diego. But most of my training actually took place in Europe, England, Germany, France, Belgium. Because what I do is I migrated from Jamaica. I worked on the merchant ship out of Jamaica and traveled to Europe. So most of my training actually took place in Europe.
You mentioned being a Jamaican native and then coming to the States. How was that experience coming to the States and then jumping into the martial arts world, not only as a person of African descent, but a person of African descent not hailing from America? Was that difficult, or did it present any extra trials that you had to encounter?
No, actually it did not, because I spent 7 years working for the U.S. government at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So the transition from Cuba to the United States was pretty easy. You know, when I came to the United States in early 1975, I actually had a contract with the Civilian Services Organization to teach at all the military facilities in San Diego. Because while I was in Cuba, we had a very successful martial arts class, the Guantanamo Bay Martial Arts Academy there. So the transition in was pretty easy when we came here.
So in terms of all the success that you've had throughout the years within the martial arts world, being promoted to now 9th Dan, in 9th Dan black belt, senior grandmaster, what do you think has been the most important trait that you've had to carry with you all throughout those years?
You know, I have developed a love-hate relationship on Facebook, because to me, you know, being a martial artist, I have come to realize that it is not about fighting. You know, you see, in a martial art, there are 3 aspects to it. There's physical, there's mental, and there's spiritual. And if you remove any of those components, then you're not as far as I'm concerned, a true martial artist. You are someone who practices martial arts and learn how to fight. But unless you are involved in it from a spiritual aspect, where both your mind and your spirit is developed as a result of the training and the study that you have done, then you're truly not a student of martial arts. You're a practitioner of the martial art. And don't get me wrong, they're very good practitioners, individuals who practice martial arts. They bring the trophy home, win competition and stuff like that. But to me, I don't consider them students of the art, because when you start questioning them about history, philosophy, terminology, physiology, they're lost. If you are a true martial arts student, then you have to have some at least basic knowledge of human anatomy, physiology. If you do not have that, then again, you're just somebody who practices a martial art. So many instructors, for instance, who are very good instructors, teachers, and they will take their students to competition. They bring the trophies home, you know, win. And if you were to ask them, have you actually been in a street fight? How many fights have you had where your life is actually in jeopardy? And many of them have never actually been in a fight where, you know, their life is in jeopardy, or their limbs, or great bodily harm to them. And that bothers me, you know, in that, again, they're good at what they do in the studio, but on the street, it's a whole different thing, because there are no referees to yell "Yame" or "Stop" on the street. You know, in the martial arts, especially Japanese karate, we have what is called shibudo. And shibudo has three aspects to it. There's shibudo when it comes to competition. There's shibudo when it comes to self-defense. And there's shibudo when it comes to mortal combat. Now, to break that down a little bit, when you shibudo is proficiency in a contest, and in competition, when shibudo is being exercised, you know, you have the judges and the referee to shout "Yame, stop." Even in competition, there are rules and regulations. There are target areas in which you can touch, hit, and so on. However, in self-defense, that restriction is not there, even though there are restrictions. To defend yourself on the street, you have to determine whether or not your attacker is about to give great bodily harm to you or just want to beat you up. You know, so you have to know your target area as well. But still, there are restrictions as to what you can do. Now, when it comes to shibudo, as far as mortal combat is concerned, there are no restrictions. The only restriction is your own conviction, because if you were to hurt somebody greatly or kill someone, then you're still subjected to the law as to why you killed. So many martial artists don't understand these aspects of the martial arts. You know, again, they know the fight from the trophy zone, but they're not familiar with the internal, the spiritual, the mental aspects of the martial arts. And, you know, that disturbed me to some degree. I do understand there are business aspects of the martial arts. You're running a business as well as teaching, and some things you cannot do because of, if you were to do it to your students, then, you know, you probably get sued, your parents pull them up and so on. But if you are going to be a true martial artist, first and foremost, you have to realize it's a way of life. One of the things that disturbed me is the fact that there are many high-ranking martial artists who have got, you know, that their pride and ego is so, I mean, off the chain. And if you are in the martial arts to have achieved the rank of a master or grandmaster, surely you have to learn some humility about you. Because the martial arts, similar to Christianity, it's a way of life. It's not something you do in 10 easy lessons in a studio. It's the way you live, the way you interact with people, the way people interact with you. It's when someone looks at you and they know right off the bat that, look, I don't want to mess with this guy. He knows something. I don't know what he knows, but he knows something. You know, there's an aura that permeates, penetrates the atmosphere around you, your space, that most people, antagonists, know, look, this person is not somebody I want to mess with. And it's not because of how you present yourself aggressively to them. They just know that something is with this guy, I don't want to mess with him. And that's what the martial art is all about. Again, I use Christianity as a example, because as a Christian, you know, it's not because you go to church, you read the Bible, you pay your tithes, etc., etc. That does not make you a Christian. You're a Christian because you live a Christian life. You're a martial artist because you live the life of a martial artist. It's not what you do basically in terms of reading the Bible, pays me the time, you're tired, spending the time in the studio, 15 hours. You know, there's an old Japanese story which goes, this student went to his master and he said, "Master, how long does it take me to become a black belt?" He said, 4 years, my son. I said, okay, that's cool. So the following week, he went back to his master and said, Master, right now we're training 3 days a week. If I were to train 5 days a week and, some more hours, how long will it take me to get a black belt? He said, 8 years, my son. I said, why? So at the end of the month, he went back, he said, Master, if I were to train 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, how long will it take me to get a black belt? He said, 16 years, my son. So the point here is not how much you train, how hard you train, it's what you've got up here. It's how you present yourself. What have you learned besides kicking high and knocking a guy head off? And that's what the martial arts is all about. Unfortunately, and I do get in trouble a lot for this, but many martial artists have gotten away from the physical and the mental, and it just primarily focusing on the physical aspect of the martial art. And that is very sad, very sad.
And our last question is, for our viewers out there, if they want to achieve an iota of the amount of success that you've had in the martial arts world, what characteristic or what trait would you give to them, and what would you tell them about carrying themselves through that journey?
Well, first and foremost, they have to not try, but they have to remove egos and pride from their walk. If you can get within yourself and know who you are, first know yourself. As Master Yama once said, there's no first strike in the martial arts. Okay, and you should know yourself before you can know others. If you're comfortable in who you are, what you're capable of doing, then it doesn't matter what others have to say about you, because you're not here to please other people. You're really not. If you're a martial artist, you're not there to show how bad you are or how good you are in the tournament circuit. It's about what you are, a martial artist. If we are here to teach younger students, then we have to carry ourselves with a degree of humility about us so that they can see. But when a instructor is, get a code warlike, and shouting and hollering to a student, then he's not sending the right message to the students. The students have to learn by observation, by seeing him or her, how they act, how they respond to, the stimuli around them. So to get back to your question, what would I tell them? Know yourself. Know why you're in the martial arts. Know what you hope to accomplish in the martial arts. If you want to be a champion fighter, then that's good. Learn how to fight. If you want to be a martial artist, remove ego and pride from yourself.
Thank you. This concludes our interview.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kid Jason, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your style, when did you get started, and your origin within the martial arts world?
Sure. Well, I got started in martial arts in 1968 in September at a school on Karate Do School on 59th in Vermont from a Kishore. And I was there for about 3 months, and I came back and he was gone. So I waited to find if he's going to come back. Couldn't find him coming back, so I would go to different places to find somebody that taught like him. And I found this one Aikido school, Al Wong, which is an A&W school on 8th and Berrindo in the Wilshire district of California, LA. Studied there for a while. But due to working schedule, kind of conflicted. And when he had moved, I had ended up taking Taekwondo from the Choi Karate Institute on Washington Boulevard in LA. And I wanted to keep on furthering myself. I didn't fall too good. I didn't know how to fall too well, so I joined Sansu Kung Fu in the city of El Monte. So I blended the two until I met Mr. Williams and Gary Gale, and I started training with Mr. Williams and Gary Gale. When I got my black belt, I started competing, and I noticed there was something I still needed to get a little more things. Mr. Williams was busy doing a lot of movies at the time. We became very, very wanted by the movie industry. So I would go from different schools and learn different things to get a happy blend. And then I went to Japan and took up Kendo, Shotokan, and Goju-Ryu, and then getting black belt there and come back to the States and started getting back with Mr. Williams. But I know there's a lot of politics in martial arts that kind of bothered me a lot, you know, especially against Afro-American martial artists. And that just bothered me a lot, and I got a lot of good backup from Mr. Williams at the time.
You mentioned a lot of key things within that last answer. You mentioned Hapkido, a couple of different styles of karate.
Right.
You also mentioned Sansu Kung Fu,
Yes.
as well as dealing with the politics of being an African American within the martial arts world during your time.
Right.
From my understanding, you've hit on that subject of dealing with the politics of being an African American within the martial arts world in the past, and you've done protests. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about your protests?
Yeah. Well, when I came back from Japan, I didn't suffer any type of racial protests in Japan. They were very loving and very wonderful people, and I was all through Indochina, from Guam Island, Korea and whatnot. And I never felt any type of prejudice at all until I got back to the States. And it really bothered me, and I told Mr. Williams that I had to do something that's going to stand out. So I choose to do a protest run in Death Valley, do it like a decathlon, which is 26 miles. But I said, but I want to do 27 miles in protest of politics and the martial arts. And Mr. Williams gave me full backing, but he was very leery. He said, do you know what you're doing? I said, actually, no, but I feel like it's something I got to do. So you need to prepare yourself. So what I would do for 2 months, I would run the shoreline of Long Beach for 2 months. Every day I'd run 26 miles, the equivalent of going 5.5 miles back and forth till I made 26. But Mr. Williams had told me, beach running and desert running is two different things. But even though I was 30 years old, I felt like I knew everything at the time, and I didn't take Mr. Williams' advice. I did it anyway. I didn't know that I was going to get so much pressure from everybody. I had death threats. I got mean letters and stuff of what I was trying to prove, and how come I was talking about them, which I never mentioned anybody's system, anybody's name or organization. And I was getting really paranoid about it till Cedro Muhammad at the time, who was Steve Summers at the time, he called me up and said, kid, the only reason you're getting these calls and threats are from people that the shoe fit. And I said, but I'm not mentioning anybody's name. That doesn't matter. You got to watch your back when you do this run. So I did the run, and halfway through the run, the state police came by and told me I have to end the run because of all the problems it would be. So I told him, I'm halfway here now, you might as well be fit. If you don't, I'll just do it at night. So he goes, well, you're to do this. I said, yes. He goes, well, we can't take responsibility for you, but we'll check on it when we can. But this desert's too big to be. So I did the run, and I did have some hardships, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing story. In conjunction with all of the things, all of the strides and successes that you have had in the martial arts world, what do you think is the most important trait and the most important characteristic that has taken you through all of these various trials, tribulations, and have brought you to the success that you currently have today?
I think training in Asia and being well received and well taught and receiving a black belt in Goju-Ryu in Japan, and Cedro and Mr. Bishop Williams. That was my incentive. It kept me going through the hardships, like I said, when I was running the desert, I didn't realize there were so many rattlesnakes. I didn't realize going up the grapevine, the trucks going up there, they're blowing back diesel fuel because it looks so pretty if you're in the car. And I was breathing that and carbon monoxide poison and the tumbleweeds catching a bad infection of the foot. But what kept me going was just thinking about that. Japan and Cedro and Mr. Bishop Williams. In fact, in Japan, when I told them I had to go back to America because I had a calling, they said, why you want to go back there? They treat you blacks so bad. I said, it's my home.
Thank you. And this concludes our interview. So,
Oh, thank you so much.
Grandmaster Athan Nelson.
Yes, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your origins within the martial arts world, how you got started, and your preferred style?
Okay, well, originally in '61, I started with a little Shotokan Judo and Jiu-Jitsu from a friend of mine. And later on in '66, my aunt walked past the window of the karate school, and she seen Grandmaster Han. She took me to him, and I liked what I saw, and I've been there ever since. And that's my main system. I redeveloped and redevised it, and with a lot of good results. I met a lot of the main players in the martial arts, exchanged a few opinions and different things.
That's nice. What have been some of your trials and tribulations through your journey in becoming a senior 10th degree Grandmaster Black Belt?
One thing that was my biggest problem was my age. They said I was too young, but I could do everything required, and I had the mentality and everything that's needed. Mostly when you get that high, it's mostly mental, along with the physical, but it's mostly mental.
Cool. How did you get over some of those mental challenges? What was the trait, or what was your biggest motivation during those times?
I had goals set, like I'm doing now. I'm continuing to bring certain things back to the martial art to help it, and I kept focused on that. I was teaching my school, getting my students together to follow the same path as me, and a lot of the negative stuff, rather than reacting to it, I just brushed it to the side and kept going, because there was a lot of people that didn't really want to see me with it. So I just ignored them and kept going.
In our previous talks, I did hear you speak about what you called your best black belt, and how at the age of 51 he was doing things that most other martial artists couldn't do. Could you speak a little bit more on that for us?
Oh yes, Drew Christian. He was #1 touch tournament champion. I started teaching him, he was 8 years old. When I brought him to his first tournament, I think he was 9 or 10. And he did fairly well. He came in 4th place the first time. And I asked him, I said, well, how did you feel? He said, I liked it. I said, no, you can't like it, you gotta love it. I said, better than that, you gotta live it. Just like our art. Our art will work for us and take care of us if we live it. And that's what he did. So he died on his birthday, his 51st birthday in 2009.
You spoke about him at the age of 51 going through and fighting within those
Yeah, he was 50, and what he would do, he would fight all the overheels, the 30, over 35 and over 40 and over in 50. Then he'd turn around and fight the regular 18 to 29. He'd take grand champions and all of them.
And what were some of the principles that you gave him that made him able to achieve such feats at the age of 51?
Gave him spiritual guidance in his mind. You never really get old if you work out correctly and take care of yourself and eat right.
Cool.
So look at me, you wouldn't think I'm 63.
Not at all, sir. Not at all.
Thank you.
My last question is this is one of my favorite questions. So, what principles, or what do you feel is the most important principal trait or characteristic that has taken you throughout all of your success throughout your life?
Okay, well, one thing is I'm not selfish, and but I'm very guardful. Certain people you can't give things to, because they'll take something good and use it to destroy something we all love and cherish. Like a lot of the martial artists I know that are in for it just the money or just as a joke or something, I kind of keep a distance away from them. The ones that are really interested in, or I see a potential that really will get spiritually involved, I always stay more or less to those. Because a lot of the problems we have are from the pranksters that want to look bigger than others. They take and hide the history of the true superheroes we've had in the past and other things like that. You know, detrimental people I always stayed away from and I always warned other people of. That's one of the best things that kept me going.
Our last question is, we're obviously going to be publishing these videos. If you could give one thing to the people out there that want to achieve just a portion of what you achieve, and possibly greater, because we don't know who is out there, what would you tell those people?
One thing, like me and my student group and the other black belts I have left, you never give up. You really believe in your art and you really live it. You live it day to day. You don't throw it in the closet for the weekend to go spar at a tournament or something like that. Every day you get up and breathe, you breathe your art. And you make a decision. You think your art first and then you make the decision. 99% of the time you'll come out right.
That was our last question, sir. Thank you.